You think you're prepared because you have a pantry full of canned goods and some rice in the back of your cupboard. But here's the brutal truth. When a real crisis hits, whether it's economic collapse, natural disaster, or a nationwide blackout, most of what you've stored will be useless within months, maybe weeks. The food will spoil, the cans will rust, and you'll be left scrambling for something edible while everyone else is doing the same. That's not preparation. That's wishful thinking. If you want to survive when everything falls apart, you need foods that don't just last a few years. You need foods that can outlive entire generations. I'm talking about 30 years or more of shelf life. Foods that have been tested, proven, and relied upon by preppers, survivalists, and even entire nations during wartime. These aren't trendy superfoods or obscure imports. These are the real foundations of long-term survival. And if you're serious about protecting yourself and your family when the world turns dark, you need to know what they are and how to store them correctly. So before we dive in, do yourself a favor. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and get ready to learn what most people will never understand until it's too late. Because when that day comes, it won't matter how much money you have or how well you thought you prepared. It'll only matter if you have the right food, stored the right way, ready to keep you alive. Most people make the same fatal mistake when it comes to food storage. They focus on what they think they need instead of what actually works. They buy canned vegetables that expire in 3 years, boxed meals loaded with preservatives that break down over time, and perishable items that require refrigeration. Then they pat themselves on the back and think they're ready for anything. But the reality is far more harsh. When the power goes out for weeks, when trucks stop delivering to stores, when inflation makes food unaffordable, those short-term solutions become worthless. You need food that doesn't depend on refrigeration, doesn't require special conditions, and doesn't lose its nutritional value over time. You need food that has been tested in real-world scenarios, not just in laboratory settings, but in wars, famines, and actual survival situations where people's lives depended on it. That's exactly what we're covering today. 9 foods that have proven themselves time and time again, foods that will keep you and your family alive when everything else fails. Let's start with the most essential survival food on the planet, white rice. Not brown rice, not wild rice, not fancy jasmine or basmati, plain white rice. And there's a very specific reason for that. White rice has had its hull, bran, and germ removed during processing. Yes, that means it's lost some of its natural nutrients and fiber, but it's also lost the oils that cause food to go rancid. Brown rice might be healthier in the short term, packed with more vitamins and minerals, but those same oils that make it nutritious also make it unstable. Brown rice will go rancid within 6 months to a year, even under ideal storage conditions. The oils oxidize, the rice develops an off smell and taste, and it becomes unsafe to eat. White rice, on the other hand, is stable. When stored properly in airtight containers with oxygen absorbers, white rice can last 30 years or more without losing its ability to sustain you. This isn't speculation or marketing hype. It's been proven by food scientists, tested by governments stockpiling emergency rations, and relied upon by preppers who've actually used rice stored for decades. White rice is calorie-dense, providing the energy you need to survive physically demanding situations. It's easy to cook with minimal resources, just water and heat. It's versatile, pairing with almost any other food you have stored, from beans to freeze-dried vegetables to canned meat. It's bland enough that you won't get sick of eating it, and it's filling enough to keep hunger at bay. Rice has sustained entire civilizations for thousands of years, and there's a reason why countries with the longest histories of survival and resilience, China, Japan, India, have built their diets around it. This is the backbone of survival food storage, and if you don't have at least 50 to 100 pounds of it sealed and ready, you're not prepared. Store it in Mylar bags with oxygen absorbers. Seal the bags with a heat sealer. Place them in food-grade buckets with tight lids to protect against rodents and insects, and keep everything in a cool, dark, and dry place. Do that, and your rice will outlast every crisis you'll ever face. Next is dried beans. Beans are one of the most nutrient-rich, protein-packed foods you can store long-term, and they've been a survival staple for thousands of years across every culture and continent. Black beans, pinto beans, kidney beans, navy beans, lima beans, great northern beans. All of them can last 30 years or more when stored correctly. The key is keeping them completely dry and sealed away from oxygen and moisture. Moisture is the absolute enemy of dried beans. If beans get even slightly damp, they'll mold, sprout, or develop bacteria that make them inedible. But when you store them in airtight containers with oxygen absorbers, they stay rock solid, hard as pebbles, and ready to cook whenever you need them. Beans are incredible because they provide plant-based protein, fiber, iron, magnesium, and essential B vitamins. In a survival situation where meat is scarce or unavailable, beans become your primary protein source. Now, here's something most people don't know. Older beans take longer to cook. After 10 or 15 years in storage, beans will still be nutritious and safe to eat, but their outer shells harden significantly. You might need to soak them overnight, or even for 24 hours, and then boil them for several hours to make them soft enough to eat. Some preppers recommend adding a pinch of baking soda to the cooking water to help break down the shells faster. But even with the extra cooking time, they're still edible. They're still packed with nutrition, and they're still one of the best sources of plant-based protein you can have in a crisis. Combine beans with rice, and you create a complete protein that contains all 9 essential amino acids your body needs. That's not just survival, that's smart nutritional strategy. Together, rice and beans can sustain human life indefinitely, providing balanced nutrition that prevents deficiency diseases and keeps your body functioning. Then there's rolled oats, not the instant kind that comes in sugary packets with artificial flavors. I'm talking about plain, old-fashioned rolled oats. These have been a staple food in military rations, pioneer diets, and survival caches for centuries, and for good reason. Oats are incredibly versatile. You can make oatmeal for breakfast, granola for snacking, bread and muffins for baking, or even grind them into flour for more complex recipes. They're packed with soluble fiber, which helps regulate digestion and keeps you feeling full longer. They're also rich in complex carbohydrates, providing steady energy throughout the day without the blood sugar spikes you get from processed foods. When stored in mylar bags with oxygen absorbers, rolled oats can last 25 to 30 years without degradation. They're also relatively cheap compared to other long-term storage foods, which makes them perfect for bulk storage when you're preparing on a budget. But here's the critical part. Oats absorb moisture easily. If you don't seal them properly, they'll go stale or moldy within months, and once that happens, they're worthless. You need airtight containers. Mylar bags are ideal. And you need to use oxygen absorbers to remove all the air from the sealed package. You also need to store them in a cool, dry environment, away from humidity and temperature fluctuations. Basements can work if they're dry, but avoid storing oats near water heaters, furnaces, or exterior walls where condensation can occur. Do that, and you'll have a reliable source of nutrition that can carry you through decades of uncertainty. Oats are also incredibly easy to cook with minimal fuel. You can make oatmeal with just boiling water, or even cold soak oats overnight if you don't have access to heat. That flexibility makes them invaluable in a true survival situation. Now let's talk about pasta. Specifically, dried pasta made from durum wheat semolina. Pasta is one of those miracle foods that most people overlook when they think about long-term storage, but it's an absolute powerhouse. Dried pasta, when kept in sealed containers away from moisture, heat, and pests, can last 30 years or more. It's lightweight, making it easy to store large quantities without taking up much space. It's calorie-dense, providing the energy you need to stay active and productive. It's easy to cook, requiring only boiling water and a few minutes of heat. And it's incredibly versatile. You can eat it plain, mix it with stored sauces, combine it with beans or rice, add it to soups and stews, or toss it with whatever vegetables or protein you have available. The Italians have known this for centuries. Pasta was originally developed as a preservation method, a way to turn perishable wheat into a stable food that could be stored and transported. It was a survival food long before it became a global staple. During World War II, pasta was a critical part of military rations and civilian survival stockpiles because it met all the criteria: long shelf life, high calories, easy preparation, and no refrigeration required. But here's the catch. Pasta needs to be completely dry and sealed. If it gets damp, even slightly, it'll develop mold or attract pests within weeks. And if you store it in regular cardboard boxes, mice, insects, and pantry moths will destroy it within months. Those little creatures can chew through cardboard and thin plastic like it's nothing. You need to transfer your pasta into Mylar bags or vacuum-sealed bags, add oxygen absorbers, seal them properly, and store them in rigid containers like food-grade buckets to protect against physical damage and pests. Keep them in a dark, cool place. Heat accelerates degradation and can cause the pasta to become brittle or discolored. When everything else runs out, pasta will still be there, ready to keep you fed. Next up, honey. This is the only food on this list that literally never spoils. Ever. Honey is immortal. Archaeologists have found pots of honey in ancient Egyptian tombs that are over 3,000 years old, and it's still perfectly edible. They've tested it, and it's chemically identical to fresh honey. Honey doesn't go bad because of its unique chemical composition. It's extremely acidic, with a pH between 3 and 4, and it has incredibly low moisture content, usually less than 20%. That combination makes it impossible for bacteria, mold, or yeast to survive. There's simply not enough water for microorganisms to live and reproduce. Honey also contains natural enzymes that produce hydrogen peroxide, giving it antibacterial and antimicrobial properties. As long as you keep it sealed and away from contamination, honey will last indefinitely, forever, literally forever. And honey isn't just a sweetener, it's a survival powerhouse. Honey is one of the most calorie-dense foods available, providing quick energy when you need it most. It has antibacterial properties that make it useful for treating wounds, burns, and infections. In fact, medical-grade honey is still used in hospitals today for wound care. It can soothe sore throats, suppress coughs, and provide relief from digestive issues. It's easy to digest, even for people with sensitive stomachs or compromised immune systems, and it never needs refrigeration, never needs special storage, and never loses its potency. If your honey crystallizes over time, that's completely normal and actually a sign of pure, high-quality honey. Just heat it gently in warm water, and it'll return to liquid form. Raw, unpasteurized honey is the best option for long-term storage because it retains all its natural enzymes, antioxidants, and antimicrobial properties. Pasteurized honey has been heated to kill potential yeast spores, which some people prefer, but it loses some of its medicinal benefits. Either way, honey is not just food. It's medicine, fuel, and survival in a jar. Stock up on it, seal it properly, and you'll have a resource that outlasts everything else in your stockpile. Salt is next, and it's so basic, so fundamental, that most people don't even think about it until it's too late. But salt is absolutely critical for human survival. It's not just for flavor. Your body needs sodium to regulate fluids, transmit nerve signals, maintain muscle function, and support dozens of essential biological processes. Without adequate sodium, you'll experience weakness, cramps, dizziness, confusion, and eventually organ failure. Salt deficiency is deadly. Throughout human history, salt has been so valuable that it was used as currency. Roman soldiers were paid in salt. That's where the word salary comes from. Wars have been fought over salt mines. Entire trade routes were built around salt distribution. And there's a reason for that. Salt is essential, and in a crisis, it becomes priceless. Salt never spoils. It's a mineral, not an organic compound, so it doesn't degrade, rot, or lose effectiveness over time. It's been used as a preservative for thousands of years precisely because it's stable, inert, and doesn't change. You can find salt deposits in the earth that are millions of years old, and they're still perfectly usable. Store salt in airtight containers to keep it dry and prevent clumping. Moisture can make salt harden into solid blocks, but it doesn't ruin it. You can still break it apart and use it. Stock up on both iodized salt for daily consumption and non-iodized salt for preservation, curing meat, and making brine. Iodine is essential for thyroid function, and iodized salt prevents goiter and other thyroid disorders, which is why it was introduced in the early 20th century. But for preserving food, you want pure salt without additives. In a long-term crisis, salt becomes currency. It's one of the few resources that will always hold value, no matter what happens. People will trade food, tools, and services for salt because they need it to survive. If you have extra salt stored, you have a barterable commodity that never loses value. Beyond that, salt is necessary for preserving meat and fish, making pickles and fermented vegetables, and even tanning leather. These are skills that become critical in extended survival situations, and they all require salt. Don't overlook this basic but essential resource. Now let's talk about powdered milk. Fresh milk spoils in days, even with refrigeration. But powdered milk, when stored correctly, can last 20 to 30 years. It's an incredible source of calcium, protein, vitamin D, and essential nutrients that are hard to come by in a survival diet. Powdered milk is made by evaporating all the moisture from liquid milk, leaving behind a dry powder that can be reconstituted with water whenever you need it. The key to long-term storage is keeping it away from heat, moisture, and oxygen. Heat accelerates the breakdown of fats and proteins in powdered milk, causing it to develop an off taste and eventually become rancid. Moisture will cause it to clump and spoil. Oxygen causes oxidation, which degrades nutrients and flavor. Store powdered milk in Mylar bags with oxygen absorbers, heat seal the bags, and keep them in a cool, dry, dark place. Don't just leave it in the original cardboard box. That's not sufficient protection for long-term storage. Once you seal it properly, powdered milk will stay fresh for decades. You can use it in cooking, baking, coffee, tea, oatmeal, or just mix it with water and drink it straight. It's especially important for families with children. Kids need calcium and protein for bone growth, muscle development, and overall health. In a crisis where fresh dairy is unavailable, powdered milk might be the only reliable source you have. It's also useful for making cheese, yogurt, and other dairy products if you have the knowledge and equipment to do so. Don't underestimate the importance of powdered milk in your long-term food storage plan. Freeze-dried fruits and vegetables are next, and these are a modern survival miracle. Freeze-drying is a preservation process that removes nearly all the moisture from food while maintaining its nutrients, flavor, color, and structure. The food is frozen, then placed in a vacuum chamber where the ice sublimates, turns directly from solid to gas, without passing through a liquid phase. This preserves the cellular structure of the food, which is why freeze-dried strawberries look and taste like fresh strawberries once they're rehydrated. When properly packaged in airtight containers or Mylar bags, freeze-dried foods can last 25 to 30 years or more. The best part? They're lightweight, easy to store, and rehydrate quickly with just water. You can get freeze-dried strawberries, blueberries, apples, bananas, corn, peas, green beans, carrots, broccoli, bell peppers, pretty much anything you can think of. These aren't luxury items or optional extras. In a long-term survival situation, you absolutely need fruits and vegetables to maintain health. Rice and beans will keep you alive by providing calories and protein. But without vitamins and minerals from fruits and vegetables, your health will deteriorate over time. Vitamin C deficiency causes scurvy, which leads to bleeding gums, tooth loss, weakness, and eventually death. Vitamin A deficiency causes night blindness and immune system problems. B vitamin deficiencies cause neurological damage, anemia, and digestive issues. Fresh produce provides these essential nutrients, but fresh food is impossible to store long-term. Freeze-dried produce solves that problem. Buy them in bulk from reputable survival food companies. Brands like Mountain House, Thrive Life, and Augustin Farms are well-known and trusted. Store them in their original sealed packaging, or transfer them to Mylar bags if you're buying in bulk, and you'll have nutrition that lasts decades. When you need them, just add water, wait a few minutes, and you have vegetables and fruits that taste remarkably close to fresh. Finally, we have hard grains like wheat berries, spelt, kamut, and rye. These whole grains are the ultimate long-term food storage solution. But there's a catch. You need a grain mill to turn them into flour. Whole grains stored in their natural state, with the hull and germ intact, can last 30 years or more when kept in airtight containers with oxygen absorbers. The hard outer shell protects the inner kernel from oxidation and degradation, keeping the grain fresh and nutritious for decades. Once you grind them into flour, however, the oils in the grain are exposed to air and the flour starts to oxidize. Ground flour goes rancid within a few months, even if you refrigerate it. That's why storing whole grains is so powerful. They stay fresh until you're ready to use them, and then you grind only what you need. Wheat berries are incredibly versatile. You can grind them into flour for bread, pancakes, pasta, and baked goods. You can cook them whole like rice, boiling them until they're soft and chewy, and use them in salads, soups, or as a side dish. You can even sprout them to create fresh wheatgrass, which is packed with vitamins, enzymes, and chlorophyll, essentially giving you fresh greens even in the dead of winter or during a prolonged crisis when fresh vegetables are unavailable. Wheat berries are packed with protein, fiber, iron, magnesium, and B vitamins. They've been a staple food for civilizations throughout history, from ancient Mesopotamia to medieval Europe to pioneer America. Bread was called the staff of life for a reason. It sustained entire populations. If you're serious about long-term preparedness, invest in a manual grain mill. Electric mills are convenient, but they're useless if the power goes out. Manual mills require physical effort, but they work without electricity, and they'll last for generations if you take care of them. Brands like Country Living and Wonder Mill make high-quality manual grain mills that can grind wheat, corn, rice, and other grains into fine flour. Store at least 50 to 100 pounds of wheat berries per person, sealed in mylar bags with oxygen absorbers, and you'll have the foundation for bread, real, homemade bread, even when the world has fallen apart. When the grid goes down and the stores are empty, you'll still be able to bake bread, and that simple ability will make you invaluable to your family and community. Here's what most people get wrong about food storage. They think buying a bunch of cans and shoving them in the basement is enough. It's not even close. Food storage is a science, and if you ignore the fundamentals, everything you've invested in will be worthless when you need it most. Temperature, humidity, light, and oxygen are the four enemies of long-term food preservation. If you ignore any one of them, your food will spoil, degrade, or become unsafe to eat, no matter what it is or how well you think you've stored it. Let me break this down for you. Temperature matters. Heat accelerates chemical reactions, including the breakdown of fats, proteins, and vitamins in food. For every 18-degree increase in temperature, the shelf life of stored food is cut in half. That means food stored at 90 degrees will spoil twice as fast as food stored at 70 degrees. Keep your storage area cool, ideally between 50 and 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Basements are often good for this, as long as they're dry. Avoid attics, garages, and outdoor sheds, which experience extreme temperature swings. If you live in a hot climate, consider storing your food in the coolest part of your house, like an interior closet or under a bed in an air-conditioned room. Humidity is just as critical. Moisture causes mold, bacteria growth, rust on metal containers, and degradation of packaging materials. High humidity also attracts pests like insects and rodents. Keep your storage area dry, with humidity levels below 50% if possible. If you live in a humid climate, use dehumidifiers, silica gel packets, or moisture-absorbing products to control the environment. Never store food directly on concrete floors, which can wick moisture up into your containers. Use shelving or pallets to keep everything elevated. Light breaks down nutrients and causes fats to go rancid. Ultraviolet light is especially destructive. That's why commercial food packaging is often opaque or dark-colored. Store your food in a dark place, away from windows and bright artificial light. If you're using clear containers, put them inside cabinets, closets, or covered bins. Mylar bags are excellent because they block light completely, providing an additional layer of protection. Oxygen is the most insidious enemy because you can't see it, but it's constantly working to destroy your food. Oxygen causes oxidation, which breaks down fats, vitamins, and proteins. It also allows aerobic bacteria and mold to grow. That's why oxygen absorbers are absolutely essential for long-term food storage. These small packets contain iron powder that reacts with oxygen, removing it from sealed containers. When you seal food in Mylar bags, toss in an oxygen absorber, usually one 300 cc absorber per gallon of food, and heat seal the bag. Within hours, the oxygen absorber will remove nearly all the oxygen, creating an environment where food stays fresh for decades. Mylar bags are your best friend in food storage. They're made from multiple layers of plastic and aluminum, making them thick, durable, puncture-resistant, and completely impermeable to light, moisture, and oxygen. Pair them with oxygen absorbers, heat seal the bags with a straightening iron or impulse sealer, and store them in sturdy 5-gallon buckets or plastic bins to protect against pests and physical damage. This isn't complicated, but it requires attention to detail and a willingness to do it right. Cut corners and you'll pay for it later. Do it correctly and your food will last 30 years or more, exactly as advertised. Let's talk about rotation and testing, because even though these foods last decades, you should still actively manage your stockpile. Rotate your stock every few years. Use the oldest items first and replace them with fresh supplies. This keeps your storage active, ensures nothing sits unused for too long, and gives you regular practice cooking and preparing these foods. You don't want to be learning how to cook beans from scratch or bake bread with whole wheat flour during a crisis. You need to know it now. Make these foods part of your regular diet. Cook rice and beans once a week. Make oatmeal for breakfast. Bake bread from wheat berries. Experiment with recipes, find what works for your family, and get comfortable with these ingredients. When the time comes, you won't be struggling to adjust. You'll already be an expert. Test your stored foods periodically. Every couple of years, open a bag of rice, beans, oats, or pasta and check the smell, texture, and appearance. Cook a small batch and taste it. If something seems off, strange odor, discoloration, unusual texture, replace that batch. This isn't paranoia, it's responsible preparation. Food storage conditions aren't always perfect, and sometimes things go wrong despite your best efforts. A leaky basement, a hot summer, a forgotten bag in the garage. These things happen. Testing your supplies lets you catch problems early and fix them before they become critical. Keep detailed records of what you have, when you bought it, and where it's stored. Use a spreadsheet or a notebook to track your inventory. This prevents waste, helps you rotate effectively, and ensures you know exactly what resources you have available. In a crisis, you don't want to be digging through piles of unlabeled bags trying to figure out what's what. Organization is just as important as the food itself. Now, let's address something most preppers won't tell you because it's uncomfortable. Food storage is only part of the equation. You also need water, cooking fuel, and the knowledge to use what you have. All the rice and beans in the world won't help you if you don't have clean water to cook them. Water is even more critical than food. You can survive weeks without eating, but only days without drinking. Store water in food-grade containers, rotating it every 6 months to a year to keep it fresh. Aim for at least 1 gallon per person per day, and that's just for drinking and basic cooking. If you want to stay clean and maintain hygiene, you'll need even more. Have multiple water filtration methods ready. Gravity filters like Berkey or Life Straw, chemical purification tablets, and household bleach for emergency disinfection. Learn how to collect and filter rainwater, how to find natural water sources, and how to make water safe to drink using boiling, filtration, and chemical treatment. Water is life, and without it, nothing else matters. You'll also need a way to cook without electricity or gas. Most people's kitchens are completely dependent on the grid. Electric stoves, microwaves, refrigerators, all useless when the power goes out. Stock up on alternative cooking fuels, propane tanks for camping stoves, charcoal for grills, firewood for outdoor cooking. Have a camping stove or portable burner with spare fuel canisters. Learn how to build and maintain a fire safely and efficiently. Practice cooking outdoors using minimal resources. These aren't luxuries or optional skills. They're necessities. If you can't cook your stored food, you might as well not have it. And most importantly, educate yourself. Read books on food preservation, emergency cooking, wilderness survival, and nutrition. Classic books like The Encyclopedia of Country Living by Carla Emery and Emergency Food Storage and Survival Handbook by Peggy Layton are invaluable resources. Watch videos, take notes, practice skills, and build your knowledge base. Knowledge weighs nothing, takes up no space, and is the one resource no one can take from you. In a crisis, the people who thrive won't be the ones with the most stuff. They'll be the ones with the most knowledge and skills. And if you want to go deeper, you'll find in the pinned comment some guides and documents that can take your preparedness to the next level. Check them out when you're ready. Because here's the harsh reality that most people refuse to accept. The world is far more fragile than we like to believe. Supply chains that feed millions of people operate on razor-thin margins and just-in-time delivery systems. A single disruption, A cyber attack, a pandemic, a war, a natural disaster can collapse those systems overnight. Currency and financial markets can lose value in days, wiping out savings and making food unaffordable even if it's available. Natural disasters, pandemics, economic crashes, and social unrest don't announce themselves with warning sirens. They just happen, suddenly and without mercy. And when they do, the people who survive won't be the ones with the most money, the best jobs, or the most social connections. They'll be the ones who prepared, who stored the right foods, who learned the necessary skills, and who acted before it was too late. They'll be the ones who understood that survival isn't about luck. It's about preparation, knowledge, and the willingness to take action while everyone else is still in denial. So don't just listen to this and nod along. Act. Start building your stockpile today. Buy rice, beans, oats, pasta, honey, salt, powdered milk, freeze-dried produce, and whole grains. Get Mylar bags and oxygen absorbers. Learn how to seal and store food properly. Practice cooking with these ingredients. Teach your family these skills. And most importantly, don't wait until disaster is knocking on your door to start preparing. Like this video so more people can see this critical information. Share it with friends and family who need to hear it. The ones who will thank you later when they're still eating while everyone else is starving. Drop a comment with your own storage tips, your experiences, or your questions. Let's build a community of people who are serious about survival. And subscribe so you're ready for whatever comes next. Because I'm not done teaching you what you need to know. When the world turns dark, when the grid goes down, when the stores are empty and chaos reigns, the only thing that will matter is whether you're prepared to survive. And now you know exactly what to do.